The outstanding African side of recent years, winners of this tournament in '84 and '88, Cameroon, in semi-final action tonight against the side who are yet to concede a goal in these championships, the Ivory Coast, proving they too were no longer footballing pygmies in disposing of holders Algeria 3-0. And they qualify for this, the second semi-final, live and exclusive for you from Senegal, and these the 18th African Nations Championships. Hello and welcome once again inside the Friendship Stadium here in Dakar. Our second live game for you of the day to find out who will partner Ghana in Sunday's final. Cameroon, the pre-tournament favourites, have to justify that now against the outsiders Ivory Coast. Our quarter-final pairings resulting in Ghana going forward, and we saw that match earlier on today against Nigeria. A thrilling one it was as well before Ghana went through 2-1. And now we come forward to the clash between Cameroon, who saw off host nation Senegal, and the Ivory Coast, who needed extra time before disposing of Zambia by the same scoreline. As you see, the sides are out on the pitch. Ivory Coast, incidentally, with just 1,600 registered players to call on in their country, and certainly have a real mountain to climb here this evening against the indomitable Lions, the Cameroon then, before the press photographers with Martin O'Neill and first Alan Parry. Live match commentary coming up as we join Alan for the latest team news.
Thank you, Phil. Good night and welcome to everyone to this second semi-final. And as Phil was saying, the prize couldn't be greater to play Ghana in Sunday's final. Here's the Cameroon lineup. One or two surprises, really. They've brought in Ibongu. That's no great surprise. He came on and made a very effective introduction to the match as a substitute, and in fact scored the winning goal against Senegal. But some of their better-known players still missing. Some of the World Cup stars from Italy in 1990 left out, as Cameroon obviously look to the future and rely on their younger players rather than the older established stars. The Ivory Coast as well have got one major drawback. Fofana, the French-based player, the Monaco striker, isn't able to take his place in the lineup. He was injured and missed the previous game against Zambia, but told everyone that he'd be fit for this semi-final. Well, that's not the case, obviously, and now they'll be hoping to get him ready for the final itself, if they make it. Terrific anticipation here inside the stadium. They've seen one tremendous game already today between Nigeria and Ghana, and now let's hope we're about to see another. The referee is from Mauritius, Lim Ki Chang. The Ivory Coast, who've been in many ways one of the surprise packets of this tournament, always rated as a side who could play fine, attractive football, but never really known in the past as great winners. And not many people expected them to make this kind of progress in the tournament. Ivory Coast in the orange shirts and white shorts, Cameroon in their famous green shirts and red shorts. And we're all ready to go then in this second semi-final of the 1992 African Nations Championships. It'll be interesting to see how Ivory Coast deal with the pressure of being at the semi-final stage. Cameroon came here as the pre-tournament favourites. There was plenty of pressure on them, and they didn't seem to handle it too well in their quarter-final against Senegal, where they were extremely fortunate to win the match in the final 5 minutes. Ball played forward there by Pegau, who was one of the outstanding players in that match against Senegal. One back by the Ivory Coast. Diaby, wearing number 6, playing at the back for them today. Like so many of the players we've seen in these championships, plays his club football in the French league. Lignon, who's one of those who's come in at the back today in one of 3 or 4 changes from the previous match for the Ivory Coast. And I'm sure the team in orange will be looking to keep possession as much as they can in the opening minutes here, just to feel out their more experienced opponents. Cameroon bidding to reach the final for the 4th time in the last 5 African Championships. So they've got the track record, they've got the experience, but Ivory Coast certainly, they've proved already, have got the ability to cause another upset here. An obvious foul then. Bongu goes spinning, and the referee awards the free kick to Cameroon. And certainly, Martin O'Neill, one thing that maybe has surprised a lot of people watching African football for the first time, they don't hold back when it comes to a tackle, do they?
Well, they certainly do not. I think Cameroon proved that in the World Cup of Italy.
Oh, it was a tremendous effort. Sorry, as we were discussing the physical nature of the game, we saw the skillful nature of the game as well, as Oman Biek came in with a fine header which hit the foot of the post. And it all stemmed from that free kick for the early foul on Bongu. Look how much higher he climbed then than the defender, although in truth the defender was marking the player in front of him, and Oman Biek was left virtually unmarked.
It was a terrific header at the end of all by Biak. Excellent header indeed. And I think that they adopted a very, very negative approach, Alan, in the quarter-final against Senegal, allowing Senegal to dictate the whole game. And in fact, they scrambled home 1-0, as you had mentioned, in the last 5 minutes. I think we're going to see a more positive approach from Cameroon. The Cameroon of 2 years ago, I think this is the thing that I think everybody, including themselves, are disappointed with. They've not really shone in this competition. But it may be a situation of Argentina of a couple of seasons ago. They play so badly that they can get to the final. But there was a possibility or an opportunity for them to show what they are capable of doing at this early stage, and perhaps that will give them the impetus to continue in a positive or a more positive frame of mind.
Well, let's hope so, because certainly a Cameroon team with a bit between their teeth can be a delight to watch, as we all remember from the Italian World Cup of a couple of years ago. Bui winning the throw-in then for Ivory Coast. Deo hurls it down the touchline, well met by Agbo, the Cameroon defender. And it's Topoko in the middle. Good interception, though, by Lignon. And the ball spins away kindly for Topoko again. 1-2 holes appearing even at this early stage in Ivory Coast back four. Agbo in possession for Cameroon. Kundi turning it out to the far side. It was a bit strong. Ebwellé never really had much hope of controlling that one.
I think you had mentioned earlier on where we were rudely interrupted by the ball hitting the post and stopping our conversation, Alan. But you'd mentioned about the physical side of the Africans. I think England would show that in their game against Cameroon that these boys are not to be taken lightly. There's no doubt about that now, that they have the physical strength to go with their definitely increasing ability.
Ekar with the throw for Ivory Coast. And easy for the goalkeeper, surely. Well, it ought to have been quite routine, but Bell really made a bit of a hash of things then. He has proven himself in this tournament to be a little bit unhappy coming in amongst a group of players like that. I well remember that incident in the match against Senegal, where he ended up punching one of the Senegalese players on the head because he was unhappy at the challenge. He does come for the crosses, but he doesn't exactly seem comfortable when he does so, and he didn't then.
I think your word unhappy would be a euphemism for being downright diabolical. I do feel that this game against Senegal, where the defenders in front of him had decided so far late in the game that they'll come in front of him, they had lost confidence in him. His handling of just normal situations that you would expect, just like that one, for a goalkeeper to be able to take, surely it makes you feel that perhaps he's certainly not at his best.
Magui in midfield for Ivory Coast. That's a useful looking ball. And good running here by Tihai. He's already scored a goal in this tournament in the opening victory over Algeria. He got the third one, in fact, in that 3-0 win, and that was excellent running by Tihai. And he's earned the first corner of the game for Ivory Coast. Taken by Alain Magui. And they look quite dangerous in their previous matches, Ivory Coast, from the set pieces. Got some big, beefy defenders, Cameroon, and they might need them. Corner was flighted too far out, though, really, to cause them any trouble then. Lignon under pressure here and loses out. Offside. Cameroon coming here, having beaten Morocco 1-0 in the opening game of this tournament. Very unhappy coach as well. Yeo Martial from the Ivory Coast. Not too pleased. Obviously not at the decision, but more likely at the way his defenders left things wide open again at the back. Yes, Cameroon beat Morocco 1-0 in the first game, then they drew 1-1 against Zaire to win Group B, and then that fortunate 1-0 victory over the host Senegal in the quarterfinals. A lot of top European managers and coaches coming along to the final stages of the tournament here. Michel Platini, now in charge of France, was present at the earlier semi-final today. And I wonder how many of the players whose skills we've enjoyed over the last week or so will be appearing on the European circuit next season, or maybe even later this season. A lot of the players, of course, are already fixed up with European clubs and have played regularly over the last few seasons in Belgium and France, Germany. But I dare say the agents will be out in force at the end of this tournament, signing up a few more.
I think their feeling on that, Alan, is that if they can control the ball in bumpy pitches like this, they shouldn't have any real problem on obviously better surfaces. And I think that they've come along here to look at their technique. They know all about the strength, especially Cameroon of Italia 90, and I think it's just basically a technique. And if they feel that they have it, which they most definitely do, then it doesn't become a problem with the Europeans thinking in terms of taking these players on.
Free kick then to Cameroon, who might well have scored in the opening minute or so. Oman Biek heading against the Ivory Coast upright. Diaby with the clearance there from inside his own penalty area. Ball not sitting down at the moment on this hard and bumpy surface, but it is now. Kundi making the challenge, but Tihai kept possession well then. Ben Salah on the far side, cutting in from the right, as he's done so effectively in this competition. But on this occasion, the cross beaten away.
It's good to see the Ivory Coast being so positive themselves. I think that they'll feel that they've had a nice little let-off early on. First minute of the game, ball rebounds off their post. They keep their no goals intact situation, and I think that they can build in that particular one. And I don't honestly feel that the way the results have been going here, that psychologically they won't feel frightened by Cameroon.
Topoko in possession for Cameroon, and then belted away by Opakore. And there's been an encouragingly open field to the start of this game. Tihai with another excellent ball out to that right-hand side. Traoré, Moussa Traoré in possession. Had ball by him. The other Traoré unable to take his place in the lineup today. Philippe Redon, who took over as coach of Cameroon a year ago and has lost only one match. In fact, that was his opening game, a friendly international against England at Wembley. Have had now 9 matches since without defeat. Deo gives the ball away. Kundi finding this very skillful man in midfield, Pagal, with the dreadlocked hairstyle. Plays for Saint-Étienne in the French league. So too does the Cameroon goalkeeper, Joseph Antoine Bell. And here's Pagal again. Looks very, very comfortable indeed on the ball. Ibongu. And that's a decent looking ball by Ibongu. It's just a little bit too deep in the end for Kana Biek. Martin, what do you make of the opening stages here? It's been pretty open, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. You know, I think the sparring is just about finished here, and I think that we're going to really get on with the game. Cameroon, a wee bit more positive, certainly a lot more positive than they were against Senegal. And Ivory Coast have got that sort of surprise element about them anyway, as they have done throughout the tournament. Now, you know, you've called them the surprise team, and I think they found themselves here in a decent position. They've done very, very well. They haven't disgraced themselves. They're in against, as you said, the pre-tournament favourites, and got a good chance of doing something.
And certainly causing some pressure on the Cameroon goal at this moment, but the whistle has gone. Free kick to Cameroon. Well, I've been saying Ivory Coast surprised everyone by getting this far. It's fair to say that they have a lot of experience of getting to the latter stages of the competition. It's their 10th appearance in the finals, and only in fact Egypt have competed in more of the final stages of these championships, but they've never finished higher than third place, Ivory Coast, something they've achieved on 3 occasions. Bongu, back to Pegao. One back well by Agbo then, and then a free kick goes against Otokore for that challenge.
Almost identical position from the first free kick that they got, where the header hit the bar, or hit the post.
I'm sure they'll be marking Omambiek a little closer this time as Kundi hits it in right-footed. Oh, that was a surprising effort that. I presume he was trying a shot then. Manuel Kundi, he's 35 now, played in 2 World Cup tournaments already in his career. There's Platini, French coach, right in the middle of the picture on the front row. His thoughts, I'm sure, are already turning to the summer when the Europeans will have their own championship. France against England, one of the big clashes in the opening stages of that competition. Right now, our minds are firmly on Sunday's final and who will win the right to play Ghana here in Dakar. Bell just organises the marking in front of him. They don't seem to have too many bodies in there yet, Ivory Coast, compared to the green-shirted Cameroon defenders. But they still won the ball, and it hit Tihai on the hand. And it went behind anyway, so nothing came of it.
I think Cameroon look so composed in the ball that I think they give this aura of invincibility. They definitely can be ruffled if you can get in round the back of them. I know every single coach talks about getting round the back of people, and it's easier said than done. But honestly, I don't think Ivory Coast will feel inhibited, that they can actually do something about this. Just feel that Cameroon look lethargically almost, playing little balls here and there. They did that for long periods of the game against Senegal and almost got undone by the whole situation.
Here they go forward with Pagao, and that was a disappointing ball. Certainly good to see that Cameroon haven't adopted the tactics they did against Senegal, where they sat back and invited the host nation to attack them for most of the game. And of course, to the dismay of all the Senegalese, what had looked like a match certain to go to extra time suddenly didn't, when Ernest Ibongu scored that winning goal just 3 minutes from the end. Very fortuitous victory indeed for Cameroon, but it's one that's given them this place here in the semi-final. Pegao, decent little ball that to Agbo on the right. He goes forward menacingly, but the 2 defenders were enough, or were they? As Omambiek comes in, Agbo went in again on the goalkeeper, but the whistle has gone. And the free kick has obviously gone the way of Cameroon here. The Ivory Coast players are furious about that, and I must say I didn't see any infringement myself. In fact, I'm not certain he hasn't given a penalty for this. He's handled the ball, that's why.
He has handled the ball. It's one of those situations where you do believe the ball ends up playing the hand more than anything else. But yeah, his hand has actually come back on it, so yeah.
But I would have thought the protest there from Ivory Coast point of view was the defender actually pushed onto the ground, and was it an accidental handball or a deliberate? Hard to think of anyone being foolish enough to deliberately handle it in that situation. But Cameroon have a penalty here and a marvellous chance to take the lead, which they have scorned with the laziest penalty I think I've ever seen. A save by Alain Guameni, but really, I think I could have saved that one. It was a really sloppily hit penalty, and the goalkeeper went down, guessed the right direction. That's the main thing, but it was a strange technique.
Yeah, it turns out it wasn't a bad save at the end. All penalty saves are good saves, but it was a lazily hit penalty, and I think it has epitomised the Cameroon approach to this whole tournament.
Well, we have had a dramatic 15 minutes at the start of this game.
It's just getting back to the penalty incident, I think myself, on that what has happened. I don't believe it was a foul. I think both of them, sorry, the original, the one that the Ivory Coast were complaining about was not a foul, but he's definitely deliberately handled the ball. You can see his hand being pulled back.
Well, during a break in the play, we can look back at that one again. I'm sure it'll be one of the major debating points of this match. And Ivory Coast must be feeling that someone is smiling on them today, because Olympique hit the post, remember, in that incident with the header from the free kick very early on. And now Cameroon have missed a penalty. I wonder if it's to be Ivory Coast Day. Here's Pagao playing the ball forward again for Cameroon. Olympique racing for it on that far side of the area, but Traoré gets there first. This is Akar, the right back. Ben Salah on the right. And the battle for possession won by Pagao. And the supporters already getting a little bit carried away with the events of the opening 15 minutes or so. 17 minutes, in fact, we've had now. No lack of incident in these matches. The football maybe not always has reached the highest level, but there have been plenty of talking points and controversies, and we've already had a couple in this game. So Cameroon quieten it down. Ball back with Bell, 37-year-old goalkeeper. And still the scoreline reads 0-0. 18 and a half minutes gone in this semi-final of the African Nations Cup.
I suppose Cameroon are entitled to think that they should be in the lead at this stage. They've hit the post in the first minute. They've had a penalty dubious enough, whether it seems to us or not. They've had a penalty well saved by Guillemene, but and they're wondering what they have to actually do to score a goal. I thought Guillemene made a good save in the initial attack leading up to the penalty kick. But if we get a chance again to see the penalty, I do think that the referee's decision was right. I think that he has fallen. He's seen the defender has seen the ball in that situation, and despite the fact he's tumbled a little bit, he's deliberately handled the ball.
I must say, my first feeling was that he'd given a free kick for a foul outside the area in the build-up to the attack, and rather like the Ivory Coast players, I was astonished to see him pointing to the penalty spot then. Agbo in possession. He took it a little bit too far. Lignon whipping it off his toe, and then a fine run comes to an end as Otakore loses possession. Sam playing it out to Akar. And Salah coming in field and then finding Otakore, and that's good running by the number 15. Well, it was a bit of an optimistic effort at the end of it. And we can look back now at the incident which led to the penalty being given to Cameroon a few minutes ago. Watch for the hand of the defender there, Lignon.
I mean, he's put his hand out. Lignon has definitely stuck his hand out. I mean, it's a situation that you're hoping perhaps your goalkeeper can come up and clear. It's a definite handball. I think the referee's been spot on.
You don't think there's a question of him being pushed onto the ball, though, by Omar
No,
Piek?
I think he tumbled onto the ball, but he had no need to do what he did.
Well, that's for sure. He certainly didn't. If that was deliberate, voluntary movement, hand to ball, then the referee was quite right. Anyway, because the penalty was missed, controversy not quite as great as it might have been. Otakore loses possession. Agbo turning it back to Onana.
The you often wonder in certain instances like that, Alan, that perhaps Cameroon are getting their comeuppance. They were so negative against Senegal that perhaps the gods are telling them that they have to do a wee bit more just to win tournaments than to sit back and hope that a break might come in their direction. But in all honesty, they should have been ahead by now.
I wonder if one could be cynical and suggest that because Cameroon took part in what was often a negative World Cup in Italia 90, they learnt one or two things that don't make them particularly attractive to watch. Anyway, they've conceded the free kick. Ebwellé. Martin was saying earlier, perhaps the lesson of Argentina's performance, in which they got all the way to the final by playing negatively, rung the bell with Cameroon, but they're under pressure again here. That was a good tackle, last-ditch 1-2. As Deo went forward menacingly.
And being more critical of Cameroon than perhaps I ought to be, Alan, simply because I know that they are very capable of playing attractive football, and they are very strong players who not only can dish it out, obviously can take a little bit themselves, but can most definitely play, and they're very capable of winning this tournament. I don't understand sometimes their negativity.
Midway through the first half here in this Nations Cup semi-final match, it's Cameroon 0, Ivory Coast 0. But Cameroon have hit the post and missed a penalty. Bell, as yet, has been reasonably untroubled, apart from a few problems of his own making when he came out for a cross early on. But this looks promising now for Ivory Coast. Well, it did for a moment, but Kundi timed his interception to perfection. Free kick to Cameroon for that challenge by Akar. As usual, I've no doubt we will see the stretcher bearers and the full medical team race on here. Diaby, the player who was fouled. No, for once they've decided to stay firmly on the touchline. Diaby back on his feet. Tumba with the free kick. And the header drops dangerously close to the Ivory Coast goal. They got themselves in a bit of confusion then. I think it was Oman Biek who was closest to punishing the Ivory Coast defenders then. Tumba in possession again, tall and leggy. Down the line it goes for Ibongu. Diaby, the covering player, won't give him any room, and in the end almost removed his jersey and gives away the free kick. Salah pleading the Ivory Coast's case, but the referee not impressed. Oman Biek, Egal amongst those awaiting the cross, but it never reached either of them. Throw into Cameroon, who, remember, won the title in 1984 and then again in 1988, unbeaten in the qualifying competition. And hoping to make the final for the 4th time in 5 tournaments.
Just in these situations here, this is where I believe that Ivory Coast should decide that they should attack a little bit more without the ball, as it were, and that's a real Irish one. I think they should get in amongst it, not allow Cameroon to be able to play the ball nonchalantly around at the back. I do believe that they can afford 2 men to run between 3 or 4 defenders, even just to put them under a little bit of pressure, so that they don't get that comfortable feeling of possession. And I don't think they've anything to lose by doing it. I don't think they'll be committing men hastily in any sort of direction. I just think that they're capable of doing it.
Foul on Traoré by Pagao. Also in favour of the referees here. They certainly haven't been throwing yellow cards around with abandon like a lot of European referees tend to do. They've let some pretty ex-certificate tackles go unpunished apart from free kicks, and it seems as though they've been determined only to punish players with cautions when it's absolutely necessary. And, if only that was a lesson that was to be learned by more referees, the game might be better to watch, as long as, of course, players don't take advantage of that. Kundi at the back for Cameroon. Still 0-0 here.
just heard what I said. Decided to push one man up, get as close as possible to the sweeper.
Won the ball back here, although didn't seem to quite know he had it then. Lignon. Deo. Pagal's challenge was a good one.
I think Ivory Coast's best chance is to try and get it out wide. I think they're trying to play little 1-2s that are never really on. Cameroon are just waiting for them to play it. They've got one man who'll force the pace to be able to get in and get a challenge, and they can rob and put 3 or 4 Ivory Coast players out of the game at any one time. I just think Ivory Coast should have just another look at it and think, well, listen, if we can get a few little balls wide, play and try and get somebody round the back of things to put a few crosses in. No, it's very easy to sit here and say that, but so far all their play that has tried to go through the middle has come on stop.
Tumba dispossessed, with the ball given back to Agbo. Very strong challenge indeed then on Onana. Cameroon get another free kick out of it, and they have looked dangerous from free kicks. Traoré pleading his innocence then, but I don't really think he has a case. And Yeo Martial, coach for the second time, back in his second spell as the leader of the Ivory Coast squad, knows his team might have another problem here. He goes towards Mambierk again, but the header was way off target this time. Now directing operations.
You just often wonder as well, I don't want to sound hypercritical, but you often think with a side as capable as Cameroon are, that they wouldn't have a few more tactics other than the big lob into the middle. So far from that position, it may have been a case of down, play a quick free kick and get on with the game. But they've taken their time, about 30 seconds over the free kick, and just lobbed it lazily into the penalty box.
Tumba bringing Ebwellé into play on that far side. He looks for Mambierk. Ibongu was on this near side, and the defender knew that. That's why he cleared hastily and well. Traoré gives possession away, and Cameroon beginning to look a little stronger now. Traoré in possession. Back it goes from Magui into his own half. Traoré across to Lignon. Making a great deal of progress here, even though they are keeping possession. Pretty patterns, but it's not getting them anywhere. Cameroon quite happy to sit back and let them play on the halfway line, and they've had to go back into their own half. Magui in possession. And when he looked up, every option was closed down. Deo. Magui. Deo again, and once more they've had to go all the way back. They've kept possession, which is 9/10 of the law, but whether they're going to make anything out of it is doubtful, and now they have given it away. They lost a bit of patience, lost some concentration, and Cameroon, like a wily old gambler, were just ready to throw in the big card, then win the ball back. And there's a certain amount of naivety, almost, Martin, perhaps, about Ivory Coast against the old pros of Cameroon.
I couldn't agree more with you, Alan. Couldn't agree more. They've held possession there. They've played 20 passes. They've knocked it around. They've not really got anywhere. The most important thing was to make sure that the 21st pass actually found a man. So they've attempted to play a little triangle football there, and Cameroon didn't really work to get the ball back. Actually got it back with just a bad pass. So I feel if Ivory Coast want to keep possession, want to keep it in areas where they're not going to hurt people, do so. Please let all have a touch of the ball, all get it, be nice and calm and collected on it, but don't give it away in stupid positions.
We're into the final quarter of an hour of the first half, and the match has fallen away a little bit. It started very promisingly indeed with those early incidents. Header against the post, and then of course the penalty. 2 misses by Cameroon. But now it's gone into a slightly stale period where neither side seems prepared to take any risks.
I'm a great believer in football, and that you can't turn things on and off like a tap. I think you've got to set out to be positive, to attempt to try and take the game to certain teams, and you've got to try and keep that sort of pressure going. You can't just turn around and say that, oh, listen here, we'll sit back in this game for about 25 minutes and then we'll have another look at it again. Because by the time 25 minutes have gone in a match, generally speaking, you've been starved of the ball, you haven't really been in the game, and it's difficult to get stoked up again. I think Cameroon have adopted this shall we, shan't we approach to the match. And they've only themselves to blame if they end up losing matches that they feel reasonably comfortable in. But Ivory Coast have not put them under any severe pressure. But Cameroon, by the same token, have from the initial start not really wanted to grab this initiative. They've not really decided that, listen, this game's really for the taking. If we go and pressurise the Ivory Coast a wee bit closer to their own goal, perhaps they'll give us the ball.
They want a free kick now for that foul. Mignon, the culprit. Was the player he fouled. It all ends in a handshake. No, in fact, the referee has seen it the other way. The foul was by Biek, he says. Ivory Coast totally waste the free kick. This is Agbo in possession for Cameroon in the green shirts. Ivory Coast competing in their 5th successive final stages of these championships. And looking to go on better than their previous best achievement of 3rd place, something they've managed more than once, as I was saying earlier in the half, but a place in the final, their dearest wish, of course. Traoré in possession for them. Good run from the back there by Ben Salah, but he wasn't spotted. He has been spotted now, and he flicks it on, and there surely was an offside as Ben Salah lifted the ball through to Diaby.
I'm not so sure that the linesman has given an offside decision. Perhaps you're right, but he just slipped back over, ball hit him, and in attempting to try and control it, he lost his footing.
Bell, the goalkeeper, was certainly grateful because he had his hand up appealing for the offside, and then suddenly the ball rolled to his feet. Pagal for Cameroon, a big gap opens up in front of him. Work by Tumba, and he gets it back a little bit, fortunately. Diaby looking for Pagal far side, and that was a bad miss, really. I think that might have been the other Biek. That's right, Biek coming in on that far post, and that was an opportunity, Martin.
Was a good chance, really good chance. It looked as if there was nothing else on. It's just a normal ball into the penalty box, and he's onside. He's got a great chance, and he's miscued completely, Biek.
Biek, who scored the goal against Morocco, which won the opening match. He will, I guess, always be known as one of those sent off in the opening World Cup game in 1990 against Argentina. One of the 2 Cameroon players dismissed that day. And they arrived on the world stage in more ways than one. 1-0 victory over Argentina. And 2 players sent off. We saw the good and the bad of Cameroon football that day. So far, we haven't really seen either side of it. It's been a subdued sort of performance. So Ibongu can open things up here. The game that really needs a goal. It's a fine run by Ibongu and a very good tackle by Deo.
It was a good challenge, yes. Ibongu looked as if he was going to make the cross there, but it caused a bit of danger. It's an excellent challenge because it's one of those that if you connect the player's legs, then referees can often give penalties. I'm not so sure that this referee will give another penalty for Cameroon unless it's an absolutely blatant decision.
Perhaps that was in his mind when he made that challenge. Well, that's a fine run. Unlucky, he just run out of touchline there. Diaby, he has won the throw-in.
We say for all the criticism that we've thrown at Cameroon, and we seem to be throwing them more criticism than perhaps Ivory Coast, they could really be 3-0 in front.
True enough. It was a sloppy ball by the defender. He was lucky that no one was able to take advantage then. Pagal battling away here with Magui. strange that in these championships, the football seems to have been at times almost one-paced, in that you very rarely see a sudden explosion of pace by players to change things around. They're quite happy knocking the ball around. They all love a feel of the ball. They love possession. You don't see too often a variety of tactics. All teams seem to play in a particular way as Oman Biek hits the ball wide.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Alan, because we do accept that this is not a British-type game. It is not blood and thunder. It is not attack after attack. It's not a boot and run after situation. I'm not saying all British teams do that, but if you were watching this game on a November evening, I don't think you would fancy it. It's not exactly the thing that would warm you up. However, it's a different culture. They do like a touch of the ball. They do like to slow it down. It's one of those situations where you feel that because it's so slow, you actually might miss it when they do quicken it up.
Well, we've got 8 minutes remaining now in the first half, and apart from the isolated incident, neither goalkeeper has been too bothered. A little bit of tension perhaps, and it's understandable at this penultimate stage of the competition. Now here's Tumba, this tall, powerful, leggy player in midfield for Cameroon, and he shows his power by getting round two men. Then look for Oman Biek on the near post, and he wins it back again off the defender, but unfortunately for him and Philippe Redon, he couldn't keep the ball in play.
Yeah, I thought Fatum was a wee bit unlucky there. I thought he did very, very well. He's very strong, very powerful. He got a left foot centre in, and I think he was looking for Oman Biek just to get in front of the near post defender. It's a situation where the best you can do is, when you've beaten your man, is to attempt to try and get it into the box, hope that it's in an area where one of your players will become to attack it.
Traoré turning the ball on, and then loses out to Pagao. Kapoko for Cameroon. Disappointing ball by him, all too easy for the defender. Deo in possession for Ivory Coast. Incidentally, the Ivory Coast played in a friendly competition here in Senegal a year ago. And after beating Algeria and the host nation Senegal, they went on to meet Cameroon in the final of that and beat them and won the whole competition. Kundi getting the ball away for Cameroon. That's good play. Nice link up on that left-hand side of the field. It was Kana Biek who got a foot in but couldn't retain possession. It looked promising for a moment for Cameroon down the left. Almost as though players on both sides are afraid just to do something a little bit different and take the initiative. Everyone pushing around fairly easy passes over 10 yards. Now that's what we want to see. Ben Salah getting away from his man, and a good ball too, and Traoré goes down. And the referee has had a long look at it. He's decided on a yellow card for Kundi, but more significantly, he has decided that the free kick will be on the very edge of the penalty area.
I think the referee's right again. Also think that Kundi might just be a wee bit lucky. He's left his foot in there, that he's still on the pitch, because that might be interpreted as a goal-scoring opportunity. He was certainly last man, and if Kundi had let him go, he would have been able to get the ball under control, albeit a tight situation.
Well, they seem very reluctant to produce the red card, the referees. I can't... Yes, there was a player obviously sent off in the second semi-final today. I was going to say that I can't recall too many being dismissed, though, in this competition. Right, let's see what they can produce from the free kick here. Traoré takes it. It wasn't too bad an effort, but it didn't really have enough sting behind it to defeat Bell. I think they could have done a little bit better there, and it was just a
a nothing ball, really. Tried to get a little bit of bend on it, but it was in a very good position. You're somewhat 18, 19 yards out. I think you should be really testing the goalkeeper some way or another. And I honestly feel that the way Traoré went up for the ball, I don't really believe that he felt he could win it or beat Bell in that situation.
Talking about red cards a moment ago, I remember the Moroccan coach, the German, got sent off. You can send the coach off in the match against Zaire, but apart from the dismissal in the semi-final earlier today, I can't anyway remember another player going off. But anyway, on go Ivory Coast with another positive-looking run here, and isn't it significant that the two really positive runs of the half have almost produced something? Well, this one might yet. Traoré took them all on there. Offside, though, was the verdict on the player in front of him. High. Dale. 3 minutes to go to half-time, still 0-0. McGree in possession for Ivory Coast. And again.
We had said earlier, Alan, that for all their apparent coolness in possession of the ball, Cameroon can be as ruffled as any other team when someone gets at them.
You can't help thinking that's the way forward, certainly for Ivory Coast in the second half here, to almost throw caution to the wind and have a real go at Cameroon. I hope they do that. I'm sure we'll see a better second half than the first, if that's the case. It's almost as though there's a respectful view of Cameroon because of their World Cup achievements. Pagal in possession, gets a good little ball through. Omambiek with a little back healer. Just their World Cup achievements, of course, but their tremendous record in the recent African Championships.
Ivory Coast haven't really attacked them in numbers. One or two individuals have tried to break through, but they haven't really come at them as if they really, really mean it.
Here's McGree for Ivory Coast. And the final 2 minutes of the half. Behind misses out. Kundi will help it back. No, he thought better of it. Goes forward instead. Good to see. Topoko. Kundi again. Pagal. And it comes back to Pagal via the defender's boot, I think. On it goes towards Omambiek and cleared by Diaby.
It's all been a wee bit disappointing, There was a nice little move by Cameroon, 3 or 4 passes, nice little football, and then suddenly a flick into no man's land. I know Brian Clough, my old manager, used to be death in centre forwards who flicked the ball. His role was get hold of it.
Well, they won 2 successive throw-ins here at Ivory Coast, but they're not really making much progress down this touchline. And I think there's more life amongst the spectators than the players at the moment. You have to say, in fairness to the players, it's been a lot of matches in a short space of time, in hot conditions and on difficult playing surfaces in the main. But you always get the feeling they're saving something up somehow. Nice bit of skill there, rolling the ball back under his foot, but then he gave it away and spoiled it, Ibongu.
See, if you feel that you're the better team, then I don't think you want to be leaving it late on in matches, like 5 minutes to go in games. If it happens, it happens. But you don't want to be sitting worrying about extra time or worrying about the possibility of penalties to lose. I think that I don't really understand that sort of mentality. I think you've got to decide that. I don't mean throw caution to the wind, Alan, but you've got to attack sides. If you feel that you're the better side, you've got to be in possession more often than them for a start, and you've got to have some reasonably incisive attacks.
A spectacular clearance there by Agbo has given Ivory Coast another throw into stoppage time at the end of the first half. It's been a disappointing first half, in all honesty. It started very brightly. I thought we were in for a real cracker, but it's fallen away because of the caution displayed by both sides since then. And not surprisingly, because of that caution, we reached the half-time interval with a scoreline of Cameroon 0, Ivory Coast 0. It could have been very different, particularly after that opening stadium here in Dakar, as the teams take the field for the second half of this second semi-final of the 1992 African Nations Cup. Remember, Ghana have already won through, having beaten Nigeria to a place in the final on Sunday, which you can see live only here on this channel. But who of these two teams will join them? Well, it's interesting to note that Cameroon have made no fewer than, or rather used no fewer than 18 of their 22-man squad so far in this tournament. And perhaps Martin O'Neill, that suggests that their coach, Philippe Redon, hasn't really, in his own mind, got clear what's his best 11.
Injuries and suspensions apart, and that's exactly what it would mean to me. They've used 18 players, possibility of 22, and that he's not actually sure what his best starting lineup would be. I sometimes think myself in my choice of team selection at Wycombe Wanderers that I'm never sure what it is. So perhaps he has a problem. Perhaps he may have a situation where he's getting some of the more experienced players just getting a little bit too old.
Talking about team changes, one of the other mystifying selections today is definitely the non-selection of Abdoulaye Traoré, the star player for Ivory Coast, who scored something like 50 goals for them at international level. He could be slightly injured, of course, but he is on the substitutes bench, and I always think if he's fit enough to be a substitute, then he should be playing if he's good enough, and that is a surprise. Fofana certainly is injured, the Monaco-based player who would have formed the strike force with him. So Cameroon's opponents today have lost two of their star strikers. Whoever goes through, incidentally, to face Ghana will be relieved to hear that Ghana's star man, Pelé, the African Footballer of the Year, because of a second yellow card in the semi-final today, will be suspended and will miss the final. That's a shame for those of us who are neutrals, who would like to have seen one of the star players of the tournament. So Cameroon, who have something of a record in these championships of scraping their way through the qualifying matches, not scoring many goals. Indeed, in the 1988 tournament, I understand they never scored more than one goal in a game all the way through to the final, which of course they won. The secret is, if you're going to be as mean in front of your opponent's goal as that, to be doubly mean at the back. And they were, and they have looked pretty tight defensively today, it has to be said, against an Ivory Coast team who, interestingly, are the only ones who haven't conceded a goal in this competition so far. Hence the fact, I suppose, we shouldn't be too surprised that the first half ended 0-0. But we have to have a winner. We have to have an outcome to this match today, even if it has to be decided on extra time and penalties.
You're not leaving much hope for the viewer, Alan, here, in the fact it's going to end up 0-0 at the end of 90 minutes.
Well, usually when you say that, it's a sure sign for a goal or two. I remember thinking just that when Cameroon were playing Senegal. It looked odds-on extra time, and Cameroon got that late winner through Ibongu. But let's hope that both sides now in their second period throw aside the caution which dominated the first half. Ivory Coast going forward. Early on here, Mignon on that far side, dispossessed. Tall Tumba. Had nowhere to go forward, so went back instead to Agbo, whacks it high into the Ivory Coast half. Met well by Akar, the right back, but now Pagal picks it up. Lovely player on the ball, I always think, the number 13. And a useful looking cross, and Karnabiak only just denied by the defender's challenge. But Cameroon win it back now. Topoko gives it away, and cleaned up nicely by Lignon. Kouameni, who was the big star of the 1988 tournament for Ivory Coast, in fact got the vote as the best goalkeeper in that tournament. As I was saying a moment ago, the only goalkeeper who hasn't let one in yet in this tournament.
You often feel that with Cameroon it's very much a case of attitude, Alan, that their whole mentality. You mentioned a very interesting statistic that they haven't scored more than one goal in lead-up matches and competitions in the last X number of months. I don't know whether it's in the mentality or what it is, but they do. Even their approach to the friendly game. I know it was played in freezing conditions against England, but apparently there was 65,000 people turned up to try and to look at the Cameroon side that they had last seen on television, which was in Italy, and suddenly they saw a very, very disappointing game, and Cameroon made no attempt to come out of their own half to play that night, and I think I thought that might just be a one-off situation. It just happens to be English conditions that they don't really fancy. But here in conditions that are suited to them, they haven't really dominated this tournament in the way that they probably should do.
Yes, that's for sure. Having been one of the 65,000 that night, I was really disappointed as well. I wonder, dare I say, whether it's the influence of European coaches. A lot of these African countries now have got European coaches. All right, they have most certainly given them better organisation and maybe added to their fitness and stamina and all-round ability to last out tournaments like this. But I wonder if they've also given them a little bit of caution, which seems to me foreign to the nature of these African players. Let's see if Oman Biek can cause problems at the other end here. No, he couldn't. What do you think about that theory, Martin?
I think in the main, despite the fact it's a generalisation on your part, I don't think you're too far wrong. I really don't. I think it is in their nature to attack, to want to play with the ball. That when they first thought that soccer was some game to take to their hearts, I do believe that it was all about attacking players, about people wanting to dribble. The old feeling that I always felt in Northern Ireland, that it was the number of players that you could dribble past before you lost the ball that determined whether you were a good player or not. And I think that the influence of the European coaches has certainly helped organisation, but I'm not so sure that has kept the fluency, the flow, and that great ability that these people possess in harness with things.
Well, as I said in the first half, no matter what the quality of the match, it doesn't seem to affect the enjoyment on the terraces.
Well, I'm delighted they're excited about it.
We're certainly excited about something anyway. Ivory Coast have a throw, and Akar has already shown in the first period he can get a prodigious distance on these throws. That's another useful one, and off the back post to Tihai, and that could well have been the opening goal of the game, maybe ought to have been. It was a difficult bouncing ball. It came up at shoulder height for him, but he could have scored.
And perhaps should have done. It's a terrific throw. It's been thrown in at least 35, 40 yards. Tihai's done well, but when he's got into that position, I think he should keep his foot over the ball and keep it down. It was an interesting situation to see where Bell took up his position. He wasn't sure whether to come for the initial throw. I think he was right to stay in his position, but almost lethargically has gone for it and decided that, well, if you miss it, that's too bad.
Well, I know commentators are supposed to be unbiased, but I must say I would like to see Ivory Coast score the first goal in this game. I'm not really bothered who of the two sides wins, but I think if Ivory Coast score first, we could see an exciting second half. I'm not so sure it would be if Cameroon were the first to score. But Ivory Coast have started positively here. Magui in possession. Nice little layoff to Ben Salah. Ben Salah's shot was not a bad one, and on this kind of uneven surface, any shot from that range bouncing in front of the goalkeeper can cause problems.
Again, good shot on the turn, does very well. I'm not so sure that Bell didn't get a slight touch in that, or perhaps he didn't. But good positive start from Ivory Coast. I thought that they had lost their way themselves in the first half. That I honestly felt that they were physically intimidated by Cameroon. They're certainly not as physically as strong as them, but there's nothing to fear in the Cameroon side. And while Cameroon go around about their business in this sort of way, Ivory Coast have always got a chance.
Still 0-0. They're playing for the right to meet Ghana in the final of this competition. Ivory Coast in the orange jerseys and white shorts, Cameroon in the green jerseys and red shorts. this tremendous record in recent African championships. 3 finals in the last 4 tournaments. Can they continue that record, or will Ivory Coast here tonight produce one of the big upsets? It looked promising at the start of this second half. And the ball out on the left. And a useful cross by Traoré. Well, it wasn't that useful. It was too deep in the end. They gave up on it.
Don't want to sound sycophantic, Alan, but I really do. I agree with you that I hope Ivory Coast scored the first goal, because you can feel if Cameroon got it that they would shut up shop completely. That's the one thing we don't want to see happening here, and I'm not so sure that Ivory Coast could get back into the game again either. So important perhaps that the first goal, if it is to be scored, should be scored by Ivory Coast.
Well, if he's one of the subs, I think they should get him on as soon as possible. He looks as if he could even knock a few of these Cameroon defenders around. Koundé, who missed the penalty. I wonder how serious that miss will be. Whacks the goal kick, and it goes straight down to the other end, to Gouameni. And you just get the feeling that confidence is beginning to flow now from these Ivory Coast players. Lignon in possession. Perhaps the coach has said at half-time, look, they are. The evidence of the first 45 minutes was that you've got nothing to be afraid of. You're every bit their equals. And that seems to be prevalent in their attitude here at the start of the second half. They're taking the game to Cameroon. I hope they don't fall for the same trick that Senegal did in the quarter-final. They did just the same thing and ended up with a huge disappointment of losing it all in the last few minutes. Lignon turning it on. It comes to Akar, the right back. On again to the little number 15, onto Traoré, but he's dispossessed. And Koundé almost got himself in a problem then. I'm not sure Bell, the goalkeeper, really gave him the shout he would have wanted then. He didn't seem to know the keeper was right behind him. Pihai almost got between them.
I think Bell had come for the earlier ball by Koundé. Koundé decided to delay on it, saw his options close down a wee bit, and decided to give Bell a bit of a suicide pass.
Here's Ibongu looking threatening. Karnabiak on the far side, and I'm not quite sure whether the forward or the defender got that one in. Is that Makanaki, the famous Cameroon player, who I gather has not exactly shown good discipline to the rest of the squad. I think he's been in a bit of trouble with his coach for, shall we say, activities not on the training field. And I think he may have been disciplined and left out accordingly. But anyway, we'll not dwell on that one. And the usual signal for the stretcher. I'm sure there must be an overtime, the stretcher bearers in this competition. They come on at the slightest hint of trouble, although in all fairness, this player, Akar, has stayed down. He hasn't moved since he fell awkwardly.
Well, he's been rolled onto it. It looked like a clash of heads with Oman Biak. It gives us an opportunity to talk not about the injured player, but about Oman Biak himself. I think he's a very talented footballer. He's done exceptionally well. Good player, can create things. He basically at times plays up on his own and is able to create things out of nothing.
I'm going to have you a little bet here that Akar, who's about to be stretchered off, will be back on in the next few minutes. I remember Ben Salah going off in an opening match in this competition from Ivory Coast, came back on, laid on a goal, and was stretched off again and still finished the game. Must be a quiz question. And they had a player, Pagal, in what looks suspiciously like an offside position then, Cameroon. But nothing came of it as they went back to Koundé in their own half. Strange ball by the big defender. And here's the sub again. He's definitely keen for a piece of the action, this fella. I'm not quite sure what he's been on, but the waistline looks a bit dubious. So Ivory Coast start again. Interesting that Cameroon are leaving one or two forward players up in this half to try and pressure the defenders. It was the opposite tactics really in the first half. where they were quite happy to let Ivory Coast have the ball at the back, but seemingly not now. Sam in possession, Dominique Sam. And it's like chess, isn't it? It's come on, tempt you out, and try and get somebody to come and have a little bite. The crowd are going to get very impatient with this soon. They certainly would in most of the European countries. There'd be howls of disapproval in England, for instance, by now, if somebody tried to keep the ball like this at the back. Now Magui switched it with a long ball forward. And perhaps that proves the point, a coach would say. Look, when you did play it forward, you lost it. But if both teams, when they had possession, just stayed in their own half, football would be a very dull game. Good interception there. Ebwellé. And a poor attempted return ball, easily intercepted by Nignon.
Neither side has been able to sustain any pressure for 2 or 3 minutes. And you know, we looked as if in the second half the Ivory Coast had come out with a more positive attitude. We felt that their near miss would fire something in them. They decided to drop back a little bit. Cameroon have had one attack that they forced a corner kick from, and basically there's been nothing else. Hopefully this might change things.
Katumba winning the ball well for Cameroon in that attack, but the cross was poor. Ivory Coast regained possession. A nice little run and turn on that far side by Traoré, but then he ran into trouble. Koundé with a good interception. This is Katumba again. And a good return ball, and he's got round the defender. He's got 2 men in the middle here. The goalkeeper, Guameni, did well then. He had Ibongu and Omambiek ready for the cross. There's going to be a substitution now for Cameroon. Ekeke will come on, as we see again that incident, Martin.
Nice little move, great move. Defender's committed himself. He just hasn't been able to beat the goalkeeper. I felt that Guameni has come out and spread himself brilliantly. But it was very close. And Cameroon are capable of doing that sort of thing. They just don't do it often enough.
Mambiek's header, a bit limp really, straight into the arms of the goalkeeper. Keke on, it's the 3rd time I think that he's been introduced as a substitute now in this competition.
It's the most overused cliche in the game, the final ball being terrible. I'm sick and tired of hearing it, but I've got to say here that the final ball has left a lot to be desired in this game, as I probably could say of the tournament in general. It's just that if there was a little bit more care taken from it, then I think we'd have seen a lot more goals in the tournament. I think we'd have seen a lot more jubilation.
There could be an opening here, but no. Bell came out and got the ball quite easily in the end. That's Sarchi, the new coach of the Italian national team, Arrigo Sacchi. So there's certainly some distinguished visitors here. And Pagal lifts things again for Cameroon. He's continued his run forward. It wasn't a bad ball. Karnabiek with a little header, and again all too easy for the goalkeeper.
Ivory Coast must be feeling now that they've been able to withstand everything that Cameroon have thrown at them. There's going to be nothing new now that Cameroon can use that will fool Ivory Coast. I think that they must feel that they've got a chance, but the only way for them to do anything is to get a few more men forward. If they're going to have to hit balls into the penalty area, there's no point in hitting it into one man who's going to be up against 3 or 4 defenders. They've got to have just a little bit of help.
Oh, a terrible ball then by Pagal, gives it straight back to Akar. And Akar again in possession for Ivory Coast. We're still awaiting the first goal here. We've had 17 minutes now in the second half of this very cautious second semi-final in this competition. Ghana already through to the final. Another yellow card flourished by the Mauritian referee, Lim Ki Chang. Agbo, the player who's cautioned.
Yeah, it was very clumsy, but it's one of those situations that you're right beside the referee. I don't think there was any need to do that, and he's been booked.
Ben Salah, the number 8, perhaps, lining up the free kick here. Chipped in, interesting one, and headed behind by Oman Bieg. I think there might have been a little nudge in the back then as the cross came over. Certainly it's not a corner anyway.
Yeah, nudge or no nudge, they had Ivory Coast had 2 players in the penalty box when they played that ball in. I actually believe when the fella took the free kick in the first place, he had more men behind the ball than he had in front of him. You know, it's going to be a wonder goal to score from that sort of situation, or develop a situation from that.
It's all very languid and laid back at the moment. Sometimes it's hard to believe that it's a semi-final here, but here's a little burst of pace that might open things up. Dakar beaten to it though. It'll be a throw for Ivory Coast, and Dakar has already shown that this is a dangerous weapon for them. He's got the running track here to get himself a little bit more room, and he'll hurl another one of those bombs in towards Bell in the Cameroon goal. They almost got a goal from the last throw from this position. It's useful again, and Bell was a bit lucky then. It came exactly where he wanted, and I think he also hit Traoré in the back to make sure he got the room.
He also decided that if it was going to be hurled in there, he was actually going to catch it, because his starting position was about 2 yards outside the 6-yard box.
Pagal tried to thread it through then, and failed again. Lignon in possession. Now Ben Salah finding Dakar. He's getting some room down this right-hand side in this second half. Easy clearance though for Ebwellé. And Ibongu on the right. There's a player lying suspiciously injured on the ground there as play goes on. Ibongu takes on the defender and does well here, and it wasn't a bad effort, and the goalkeeper had a bit of trouble feeling it. Now the Ivory Coast players are drawing the attention of the referee to an incident I can only imagine happened off the ball. I didn't see it, certainly, and I'm pretty equally certain the referee didn't see it. Incidentally, I noticed that I would have won my bet, because Dakar went off on the stretcher, obviously didn't stay off for long.
Yeah, I was too busy watching Ibongu trying to make inroads into the Ivory Coast defence.
The world's press and TV and radio stations here to record these championships. Won't be terribly surprised to see that the stretcher bearers are again not required. They must be feeling terribly rejected this week. They're probably longing for a good injury to get stuck into.
It would be interesting to know what the average supporter would think of the game, and perhaps of the tournament itself. You know, do they feel that it's perhaps a bit of a bore, that there could be more attacks, that perhaps Cameroon should take more initiative? It'd be interesting to see what they thought about it.
Even the younger ones must be caught up in the atmosphere of it all, but it is true, statistically speaking, that there have been more goals in most of the championships to date than there have been in this one. Right, we're going to see now the leading goal scorer in the international records of Ivory Coast come onto the field. Abdoulaye Traoré is going to replace Deo, who really, strictly speaking, is a defender as well. So maybe now at last we're seeing caution being thrown to the wind. And we've got a striker on for a defender, and that might open things up. Regrettably, it might open things up for Cameroon, but I don't mean to say I have anything against Cameroon, of course, but I'm thinking of the nature of this game. I repeat, it would be better, I'm sure, for the neutrals if Ivory Coast scored first. So they got their top striker, Traoré, mystifyingly left out in the first place, on the field now. 2 Traorés on, in fact. And that wasn't a bad effort from that kind of distance. Magui, who scored against Cameroon in the friendly tournament here in Senegal a year ago. First player who's had a crack from that kind of range in this game.
Yeah, good shot, not too far wide. But I think you're right. I also think that it's a positive step by Ivory Coast. We keep talking about positive and negative at the end of it all. I think it is. I think they've decided that there's nothing really to fear here in this game, and that if anything, if we can get another man forward, if we can get a little bit of support to our front players, then we're capable of doing so. I say we, I mean Ivory Coast.
Foul given. Akeke, the Cameroon substitute, concedes the free kick. They wanted to take it quickly, but the referee wasn't happy. Midway through the second half, and we still look for the deadlock to be broken here. Cameroon 0, Ivory Coast 0. It's hoisted towards Cameroon's penalty area, headed away by Karnapir. Traoré, that's the Moussa Traoré. Wins it back and gets it again. This is a Moussa Traoré linking well, and Ben Salah. And I'm not quite sure who got the final stab at goal on that one, but it was certainly a promising effort. It obviously came off the defender, and still the medics wait to be brought into the action. They've got a fixation about it, I think, in Senegal. Corner it is then. And low and tricky. Ooh, it took a very unpleasant bounce as well in front of Bell, but it bounced into his hands in the end.
I'm not sure that the corner was meant to go in exactly that position, but even so, it was a near post corner. It was swung in, and the possibilities of Ivory Coast getting to the ball first. As it turns out, it took a wicket bounce, deflection, whatever it may be, and it actually caused a little bit of panic in the Cameroon defence.
Ivory Coast have had the better of the exchanges in this second half, but they haven't got a goal yet. And many teams over the years have found that Cameroon can play disappointingly and still win. I wonder if Ivory Coast are going to be the latest victims of that particular philosophy, if that's what it is. Diaby turning it forward. Suspicion of a foul then, but the referee's not interested. Kundi, well won back in the midfield by Lignon. And this could be promising. It opens up nicely for them. High laying it back. And again, they look for the route out on the left. The cross was hit much too deep, though. Ben Salah never had any hope of getting near that.
Yeah, the cross was too deep, you're right, but it was a nice little build-up by Ivory Coast. Now, I feel that while they're not actually really getting that far with it, at least they're getting confidence now. They're playing just in front of the Cameroon defence, but they haven't been able to break them down to any large degree. But even so, they're getting a wee bit more confidence, and they're playing a wee bit further forward, which is good news. 20 minutes to go then, and Ghana await the identity of their opponents in Sunday's final of this 1992 African Nations Cup. Will it be Cameroon, the pre-tournament favourites, or Ivory Coast, one of the surprise packages? There's Traoré, Abdoulaye Traoré, working the ball out to the left-hand side as they build again down that left flank. They favoured that in this second half. Given away though, Pagal in possession for Cameroon. He seems to have hit that too deep, but the defender had to keep working hard anyway. Akar against his opposite number, Karnapir. Throw to Cameroon. Ebwellé will take it. Over everyone's heads, it was a dangerous throw and a dangerous ball into the box, but Ivory Coast dealt with it well enough. And a fine little run here by Otokore. He's got support from Ben Salah. And a pity that 1-2 didn't come off there. It looked promising again, right at the heart of Cameroon's defence. I also think he's chosen the wrong option, Alan, there. In a very important stage. If he had looked a wee bit left, it looked as if Ivory Coast were in. Instead, he's played it back to the man who's played it to him, and the situation was lost.
Traoré wins the throw. Ball coming off Kundi, whose penalty miss in the first half is looking increasingly significant for Cameroon. Now, Kwame Akar will try and get as much length on the ball again here with this throw. He's done very well with these throw-ins so far. That's why Cameroon have sent a player to jump in front of him like that. Referee might decide that's ungentlemanly conduct if he gets too close to him. Whistle gone for a moment, but it was obviously a whistle in the crowd, and the defender just shepherding the ball over the line for a goal kick. It's strange, isn't it, that there doesn't seem to be any great sense of urgency from Cameroon at all when you think they're, 18 minutes away from a possible place in the final. They seem to be almost lazily going through the game.
And wasn't it the same in the quarter-final against Senegal? I mean, the goal just happened now in the last 5 minutes. You couldn't really say that Cameroon had played for it. But I suppose because they've that sort of approach to the game, I think it's, as you mentioned earlier on, that they're capable of producing something when they're playing very, very disappointingly.
Segar almost producing a telling cross then, but Ivory Coast back in possession. And a good strong run as well, but a fine tackle. That really was a well-timed tackle by Ebwellé. Wasn't Ebwellé, in fact. Ivory Coast coming on again, and has he got in behind the defence? He certainly has, but was he offside? And then the Ivory Coast players claiming there was a trip. It was a strange little incident, that, because your first reaction was that there was an offside here.
I think, yeah, perhaps the left back has kept him onside. Don't feel that it was a penalty. I think he's clumsily put his foot in there, and I think it would have been a harsh decision. Now, that's my first reaction. I've got to say it's also my second reaction. But Cameroon, if they do want to progress to the final, and I'm sure they do, have got to be very, very careful. I think the Ivory Coast have had the better, certainly in terms of possession in the second half, and are actually feeling as if they can break them down now, which I certainly didn't think they could do in the first half.
Goal kick.
I think on a sort of a technical point of view, which I feel that Cameroon defenders are so strong. You know, they lean into you. I remember my old friend John Robertson, left winger at Nottingham Forest, the little fat lad, said he had a real education when he went and played in the European Cup football. That unlike English defenders, the foreign lads would lean into you. Just when it looks as if you're going to go past them, they would just lean across your body. They would never really give fouls away, or not noticeable fouls, but they were actually fouling you all the time. And I feel this with the Cameroon defenders. Suddenly you think you're away from them, and they lean back in across your body, and they can and they take possession of you.
Yes, they're cagey and experienced, these Cameroon players, club level and international level. Ivory Coast have been engagingly naive in many respects of their performance today. They've provided more entertainment, well, for me anyway, but they maybe haven't quite had the know-how. The crowd waits and wonders, as do the Ghanaians. Which of these two sides will make it to the final? Under a quarter of an hour to go. Spectacular headed clearance then by Traoré, Moussa Traoré.
I do like the hats.
It's certainly nothing to do with the rain. They've had balmy weather, as you'd expect, here in Dakar for virtually every game in this tournament so far. Pitch baked dry, and not that even or flat, has caused a few problems for the players. Agal finding Kundi, and then Ebwellé turns it in, and this looks dangerous. A good challenge by the defender, for my money, on Oman Biek. and they looked with horror then, the Ivory Coast defenders, towards the referee. Oman Biek looked with just a hint of anticipation and expectation.
Yes, he may have gesticulated to the referee, but again, no penalty. And I think the referee was absolutely spot on. The way things are going, Koundé would have probably missed it anyway.
Again, certainly high, the foot,
it was a high foot, but I do believe that Oman Biek was on his way down anyway. It's I was really going to say 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. It was certainly 9 of one and 3 of another, if you get my drift.
I think so. Whether anyone else does is open to doubt, but it's still 0-0 then. 13 minutes to go here, and Ivory Coast in the orange jerseys, still hoping, still praying, still believing they can reach the final of the African Nations Cup for the first time in their history. They may have to endure another 30 minutes, and one can't help feeling that the extra experience and strength of Cameroon could be a telling factor if the game does go to extra time, and thence should it be needed to penalties. Dear, that was a terrible sloppy ball. Unfortunately, Oman Biek couldn't do anything with it. Fortunately for Ivory Coast, anyway. That looked like handball by Futumba, but not given. Futumba turning it back into his own half then. Banana turns it even further back. Koundé couldn't go back to his goalkeeper. This looks dangerous for a moment. But again, they've got some players who are experienced and cool in possession, and Ebwellé in the end then did exceptionally well because all routes out of the cul-de-sac seem to be closed.
On the extra time point, and it's looking increasingly like extra time, you wonder whether it's an advantage to have gone through that, but certainly in the previous round the Ivory Coast were able to muster a goal in that match against Zambia.
That's right.
So, as I say, whether it's an advantage or not in these particular conditions, I'm not terribly sure.
Easy Bongu, good tackle on him. And did the ball come off Cameroon player? No. Diaby's tackle, and it's a throw-in to Cameroon. Now they've got 4 or 5 players in the penalty area for the first time I can remember here. I couldn't get the ball back to any one of them. The long-range shot wasn't a bad effort, and it spun really menacingly in front of the goalkeeper. Good effort by the substitute Ekeke.
It was a good effort. Yes, he's had to control it very, very quickly because Ivory Coast players were coming out to him. It's bobbled a little bit, but the bobbles possibly helped him because it's one of those that if it's on target, it just might bobble over the outstretched hands of the goalkeeper. But I think eventually Guanamene had it well and truly covered.
Naki, one of the substitutes there with the, shall we say, distinctive hairstyle as the match reaches the last 10 minutes of normal time without as yet having produced a goal. Good play by Otokore, foul by Ebwellé. Referee telling him to make sure that his socks are up. One of the rather sillier recommendations from FIFA in recent years. Koundé. Pretty aimless ball to Diaby inside almost deserted Ivory Coast half. If Cameroon are going to get a goal, they're going to get one on the break now, because there's no doubt that Ivory Coast have the initiative in terms of possession and attitude. Good link-up play. Need to be a little bit more decisive. Diaby did well. He almost turned the defender back, and the linesman has indicated in Ivory Coast's favour. Could this be the moment, I wonder? Diaby doing well, and he's taken up his position on the far post by the looks of it for the corner. Akar on this near post as Magui will swing it in left-footed. It wasn't a good ball. Pagal easily able to head it clear. They might get more joy from the throw-in.
Again, it's been the second poor corner that Magui has sent in. The idea is absolutely right, it's the delivery is pretty poor.
Akar again with another long throw and another good one. And he can try again. I don't know about his legs, but his arms are going to be sore at the end of this match and tired. He's taken about half a dozen long throws. Gurami Akar, and they've been a pretty important weapon for Ivory Coast. They might get something out of it yet. Well, that could have gone anywhere, that loose ball, and Bell plunged on it, realising the danger.
Yeah, plunged on it is the right word, but I feel that he's gone feet first with that one. It's almost a protection of his face. I mean, I'm being really overcritical on Bell here at the moment, but I just felt that he's gone down feet first. It's a situation that if Ivory Coast had been able to get a slight touch in that one, they may have been able to beat him.
Traoré in possession for Ivory Coast. I think he's overrun it a little bit here and fouled Keke in his attempt to win it back. And the clock ticks on. 7 minutes remaining. Still 0-0. Danger here. Oman Biek. And what a wild effort that was by one of the most experienced players on the pitch. Famous for his winning goal against Argentina in the opening match of the 1990 World Cup. Top scorer for Cameroon in the qualifiers, but lost all composure here.
Yes, talked about him being a very good player, but certainly composure he lost at this stage because defender slipped a little bit. I know it's a very acute angle, but it's one of those that you think that you can get on target. He's been able to get his foot right round the ball and has just swung amazingly, and the ball's gone miles over the bar. You can't say it's a fantastic chance, but it's certainly a half chance.
Well, the way the goal-scoring opportunities have been limited in this match, it certainly does qualify as a half chance at least, and an important one perhaps, an important miss.
It's getting to a very dangerous time for both sides. You know, I think they have one eye on the clock. You can see extra time looming, and I think it's a situation where if any of the sides had ever any more than one or two men up front at any stage of the game, I think they might even be withdrawing them and thinking, right, okay, we'll see it through to extra time.
We've got 5 minutes to go of normal time, and Ivory Coast are making another substitution now. Eugene Greyo will be the man who will come on for them. They've got a slightly different version on their caption. But it's the same player we're talking about, and he's got 5 minutes to make himself a bit of a hero here if he can. Tihai, who's run himself into the ground really. The number 9 will be the player coming off. And Akar will have the opportunity to hit another one of those long throw-ins in here. Bell trying to come and claim it, and did so quite decisively that time. He never saw that Gary Crosby goal a few years ago because he didn't really look behind him to see what was happening then as he came to the edge of the area.
I think Bell's decided that the ball's long enough, the trajectory is long enough in the air for him to come and grab it. I think he's done the right thing here because if there's just a slight touch on, whether it's a defender back heading or whether a forward's been able to get a touch, then it's going to cause a wee bit of confusion in the penalty box, and I think that Bell has decided, well, I might as well grab it at first occasion.
Pagal in possession for Cameroon, finding Oman Biek on that far side. The ball returned to the right. Keke unlucky then, he felt he should have had the throw.
of 90 minutes is the most endearing thought they'll have. Strange enough, Cameroon look quite tired themselves. No real support for Ekeke there as he tried to get through on the right-hand side.
Biek playing a good ball through to his brother, Biek. 3 minutes of normal time remaining. Cameroon 0, Ivory Coast 0. And good work by Futumba. Excellent work, in fact. Dakar forced to slide the ball behind. If they've got a long throw expert to match Akar himself, obviously not. Ebwellé going to that near post. It's still pretty dangerous though, but the keeper unchallenged really. You can imagine in a few countries where keeper ball, probably the linesman and the policeman behind the goal would have ended up in the net as well then.
I feel that Ebwellé of Cameroon has decided to take a leaf out of Akar's book, just throw it in there. And I've got to say that in recent moments, it's been the best ploy of the better ploy of both teams.
Well, if we say now, we're surely going to have half an hour of extra time. It's probably the best way of producing a goal, but it certainly doesn't look that way. I think both sides have settled now for extra time. No one wants to make an error at this stage of the game. Imagine the shame going back home to your country, being the man who caused your team to be knocked out in the semi-final, just a minute and a bit away from extra time. Don't think we'll see anybody taking too many chances now. Throw in then to Cameroon. Pagal will take it. And not sure what he's indicating to the bench, presumably. It's slowed now to almost pedestrian walking pace, this now. And we're into the final minute.
It's almost a battle of attrition. It's, you'd mentioned earlier about no one wanting to make a mistake, and I'm sure that that's absolutely right. Also feel at this stage, if someone was to take a little bit of a chance, just throw something forward, then they may possibly catch people unaware.
Biek trying to do just that, and a bit of a rash challenge at this stage of the game by Akar. Has given a free kick, and there'll be a few hearts in mouths at the moment for Ivory Coast and their followers, because you wouldn't fancy facing this free kick at this stage of the game. There'll be some very nervy defenders, and Redon just telling his players, presumably, get in the box, get the bodies in there. Anything could happen here. Futumba will take the kick, and it's not a bad one, but the defender was very decisive, Diaby, to get it clear. And that might just be the final chance of the game for either side to score.
The second half's been a wee bit like the first. Started off reasonably well, became devoid of incident, and it's difficult to see anyone actually breaking the deadlock.
Ben Salah wasn't strong enough then in the tackle. Comes back to Biek. The referee seemed to have indicated something then. He confused the players, but players gone on. Biek in possession. And a useful ball to Pagal, and whipped off his toe by Lignon as he was poised to shoot.
I think Pagal felt that he was fouled there as he turned inside. Referee's way of play off.
With all the stoppages, there'll be a fair bit of time to be added, I would have thought, by the referee, as Ben Salah tries to go round the defender and makes a useful looking cross. It was a strange attempt to return the ball to him, I presume, and it's gone behind for a goal kick. And Yeo Martial there in the centre of the picture. The coach of Ivory Coast knows, I think now, that his team will be facing half an hour's extra time, and that is confirmed by that final scoreline Could Makanaki be the man to come on and save things for Ivory Coast? We will go into a period of extra time, 15 minutes each way. Penalties after that, if necessary. There'll be some very tired bodies out there, but the match has to reach a conclusion. We must know by the end of the evening who will face Ghana
into a new generation, a new feeling that certainly that all the calls that having an African World Cup winner by the turn of the century were not unfounded. And these are the sort of things. I've been massively disappointed by Cameroon. We accept that Ghana and sides like this here are emerging nations, but Cameroon been disappointed.
Well, we're underway then in the first period of extra time. It's going to require something inspirational. Ivory Coast still to concede a goal, incidentally, Martin. I wonder who has the will now to go on and win.
Yes, the point I thought about there as both sides tendered aching limbs was the thought that Ivory Coast have been through the situation where they had extra time in their previous victory over Zambia. I think psychologically that Cameroon will feel that extra 30 minutes that Ivory Coast played will be to Cameroon's advantage. I think in a space of a couple of days that they being Ivory Coast should feel more tired. Don't know what your view on that is, Alan.
Well, I would have thought one thing's for certain, the only people really delighted that this match has gone to extra time will be Ghana, because they, of course, didn't need that, and they'll be the fresher of the two. Half an hour less football might be important at the end of the day, to use a well-known football cliche. Mogui dispossessed here by the strong-running Cameroon players again. Ibongu trying to get the ball through, and a bit untidy now from these tired legs. Moussa dispossessed, edge of the penalty area, and a well one back then by Otokore, and that's a foul to Ivory Coast. The free kick. Ben Sala, the player, brought down. He's not been anything like as effective as I've seen him in previous games in this competition. He looked really dangerous in the opening group games. Hasn't been able to get into the match today. Little Otokore again, and he's given it away. Mambiek's challenge in the middle of the field, but it is beginning to look untidy now, isn't it? Traoré, Abdoulaye Traoré, the most experienced player in this Ivory Coast squad. Would dearly love to give his manager just one goal now. That would quite possibly be enough to win this game. Lignon playing it back and then swept in again. Couldn't be underneath it. Foul that was. Lignon, the player who conceded the free kick. You can't really on one hand the number of genuine goal-scoring chances we've had in this game. It's made it a disappointing spectacle, even allowing for the inevitable pressure of a semi-final in such an important championship as this. I've been most disappointed by Cameroon. At least Ivory Coast have tried to play, tried to go forward, tried to win the game. Sometimes you would believe cynically that Cameroon have sat back, hoping either to snatch a late goal as they did against Senegal in the quarter-final, or even possibly they've set out their stall to go all the way to penalties. It's been almost a parallel, going back to the 1990 World Cup, of Argentina's approach. Must have been the most reviled team ever to reach a World Cup final, Argentina in 1990. And I wouldn't think Cameroon, if they make it to the final, will have won too many friends here in Senegal either. Their approach has been negative.
Yes, and we're not just making the comments on one particular game. This is now their fourth game of the tournament, and I feel that they've adopted the same approach throughout. It's a situation where you feel that once they've got into extra time here, you would think, well, let's throw a bit of caution to the wind. Let's go and try and win this game, because having penalty kicks to decide the finish of the match is basically a toss of a coin. And therefore, if you are the better side, if you have decided that 90 minutes is something that you're going to wear sides out with, let's go and have a fresh approach, have a few challenges, have just a more positive approach to the game, and see if you can actually get something out of it in this 30-minute period. Because if it goes to extra time, as I say, it's a toss of the coin situation.
Keke playing the ball forward, making sure they keep possession anyway. And Kundi sweeps it on towards Oman Biek inside the penalty area. Diaby got it clear, and that was a good interception by Lignon. On back by Pagao. And again, the defender, this time Akar, got it away. Traoré was beaten to the ball. Throw into Ivory Coast. You almost begin to feel when you see a match like this that there ought to be some kind of clause in the rules of a competition to say, well, let's dispense with the 30 minutes extra time, let's go straight to penalties, because I'm sure the real meaning of penalties was to try and separate two sides who'd gone hammer and tongues at each other and just couldn't be separated on the scoreline. Sometimes, as I was saying, you think the teams almost start the match thinking, well, at least we can get out of it on the penalty shootout.
Yeah, I think Red Star Belgrade in the European Cup final last year against Marseille were the only side that you could actually say in your time that penalty kicks have been invented to win big major competitions. You'd be the only side, Alan, who say actually set their stall out to get that far and take it to a penalty kick shootout. I can't possibly believe that Cameroon have that mentality. I think that they must feel superior to the Ivory Coast. They must feel more experienced. They must think that they're overall a better side. I can't believe that they can put it down to such a fine degree that they can win this game in penalty kicks.
Certainly, unless I've done my mathematics wrong, Ivory Coast have used their two substitutes now. And I think we've only had the one, haven't we, for Cameroon, Keke? So that's something up the sleeve, perhaps, still for Cameroon.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure that one substitution should make a great deal of difference to the way Cameroon have performed here today.
Throw into Ivory Coast. We've had 7 minutes almost of this first period of extra time. Still 0-0. Cameroon in possession, clearing their lines. Tall, awkward-looking Futumba gets the ball under control eventually. Then Ibongu with a little layoff. Pagao knocks it back towards Futumba, and another disappointing end, really, to a Cameroon attack. Incidentally, if you've just tuned in expecting to see the Ford ski report, I must tell you that this semi-final of the African Nations Cup between Cameroon and Ivory Coast was 0-0 at the end of 90 minutes, and therefore the teams have gone into half an hour's extra time. All programmes, therefore, will still be shown, but delayed once we've seen the outcome of this particular match. Ford ski report next, and the week's Spanish football coming up after that. Tumba finding Ebwellé on the left. First time ball towards Ibongu. One back by Traoré, Moussa Traoré. Ben Salah under pressure here from Ekeke, and Ekeke fouls him in the end. Ben Salah plays for Le Mans in the second division of the French league, gets the free kick.
just wonder, Alan, if when we look at a lot of tired legs out there, is there a case for maybe extending this 2-week competition maybe to a third week? I know perhaps there's an awful lot of time left for players having time on their hands or whatever it may be. Perhaps television coverage and things like that there have to be considered. But perhaps we might just see a better game. Remember that these teams have played quite a few games in a very short period of time in terms of football, and I think it's beginning to show out there.
That's why I wonder about the wisdom in a competition like this of a match being decided on extra time and then penalties. If they knew at the start of the match that after 90 minutes it would go to penalties, just maybe, I don't know, we would see a slightly more positive attitude from the teams in the 90 minutes.
I think, as you mentioned, I think the rule was set out genuinely to separate sides. If they can't do after 90 minutes, they can certainly do after 120, and that generally speaking, one side will gain the initiative or the upper hand in that length of time. But it's certainly not been the case in this particular match.
In all honesty, both teams are looking stale and tired now, and it's difficult at this moment to understand how the game could be settled by anything other than penalties. Pegal making a good run here, though. Perhaps he's the man to do it. He's certainly got the ability, but he had the ball whipped off him by Magui. And Gourmeni still keeps intact that proud record of being the only goalkeeper in these championships not to concede a goal. Walking pace now, quite literally. Bougre, the substitute, hope to have a bit more stamina than most. These teams are already having played 3 matches, of course, to get themselves to this semi-final stage. Here's a little spurt of enthusiasm and pace, though, and an excellent run too by Otokore. The ball pushed wide to Traoré, who wins the corner off Agbo. Martial, the coach, urges one last big effort. It's not quite a last effort yet because they've got the whole of the second period of extra time to come, but it would lift those tired limbs if Ivory Coast could snatch something here, and they're so tired that he couldn't even lift the corner in Magui, straight against the defender who was stood there for that very reason. Bougre, the tall substitute, number 18.
I think very briefly, Al, that's a better decision. If Lignon's going to take the free kick, at least he's going to, with right foot, swing it in.
The corner does indeed come in deep to that far post. It evaded the target, Dominique Sam.
I think the Ivory Coast bench were roaring at Magui not to take the corner kick. Not only did you mention he was very, very tired on it, but his left foot would have swung the ball out again. And I think that's the last thing that the Ivory Coast wanted, was a corner kick for them, to find out that within 5 or 6 seconds they could be defending it themselves. That's if Cameroon had decided to have the audacity to attack. I'm afraid I'm getting rather cynical.
I think she is as well. She looked distinctly bored. I think she's thinking of the candlelit dinner that she'll be having later tonight. Maybe with one of these players, who knows? Not that I'm suggesting that she might not be related to one of them. Here's a fellow who can liven things up, Mr. Makanaki. We all remember him from the World Cup. Dakar with another of those prodigious throws of his. Even he's getting tired. His arms have finally gone. Couldn't get anything like the length that he'd done on previous throws. Good clearance by Pegal under pressure, and a very good ball as well, and there's danger here. Oman Biek going through. Oh, that was a marvellous tackle, a really marvellous challenge, because Oman Biek just got that half a yard then on the defender, and no wonder the congratulating Dominique Sam, the number 19, for that challenge.
Excellent challenge. Really nice touch there by Oman Bey. He was able to control it, got it in stride, and just when he was about to pull back and hit the ball, great challenge coming in from Sam.
Well, that was a life-saving tackle. Had to time it well, otherwise there would have been a free kick, maybe even a penalty if he'd gone on another pace or two.
That was an excellent challenge. Maybe that just might give Ivory Coast that heart to say, well, listen, it's going to be our day. They're not going to score a goal against us. Can we just take that little bit of a chance at the other end?
Just when you think now they've at the post, we've had Makanaki come on now for Ibongu while we were watching that replay. They've hit the post of Cameroon. They've missed a penalty. They were apparently clear on goal then with their top striker Oman Bey favourite maybe to find the net, and that didn't work out for them. Are the gods smiling on Ivory Coast here? Mignon. Wow, that was a bit closer than I thought at first. It was a long way out for Moussa Traoré, but he had a decent little stab at it anyway. It wasn't that far over Cameroon's crossbar.
I think we're clutching at straws now. It wasn't that far over, to be perfectly honest, but anything that goes remotely near the goal, we're calling a chance.
Yes. Oh dear, I thought for a second he hadn't seen the Ivory Coast player sneaking in on his blind side. Then that could have been an horrendously memorable error. Well, we've almost reached the end now of this first period of extra time. We've got 15 minutes of real football, if you like, and then the lottery of penalty kicks as referee Lim Ki Chang blows the whistle to ask the teams to change ends. I always think this is a cruel part of these matches. The coaches are desperate to get on, the players are desperate for a drink and maybe have the legs massaged and just sit down and recapture their thoughts, but no, the rules say on you go, change straight round, and that's exactly what they'll have to do.
I think at this stage the Ivory Coast will feel that they've won the battle, as it were. They've gone this distance with Cameroon now. They haven't conceded a goal. Well, they haven't done in the tournament, but they've stayed with it. And I just think that if Cameroon win the game in this period, Ivory Coast can go home and think that they've had a very, very good tournament. I think what they should be thinking now is, let's be a wee bit more positive. I know we're very, very tired, but Cameroon in the same vein are just as tired as ourselves. Can we actually take a chance here? Because if we do, I honestly feel that they can ruffle Cameroon.
Well, the referee's obviously relaxed the rules a little bit here, because he has allowed the players, or one or two of them anyway, to come over to this touchline to get a welcome drink. But he wants them to get back on with it now. 15 minutes to go in this semi-final of the African Nations Cup. Cameroon 0, Ivory Coast 0. We've now had 1 3/4 hours of football without seeing a goal. We have to have a winner, I remind you. It'll go to penalties if we don't get a goal in the next quarter of an hour. Traoré, brushed aside by Tarnabiek. His ball into the middle wasn't a particularly good one. One back now by the little number 17, Magui. Dakar plays it forward. That's a foul, is it? No, referee says play on. Good decision. Otokore. He got a little crack as he played the ball away as well. Magui in possession, gives it back again to Otokore. And Otokore still going strong. Ebwellé finally took the ball off him. Pagal's gone down with a bit of cramp, I think. And Ivory Coast get it back once again. That's nice skill by Bugure, the substitute, and he just played that against Agbo and hoped for the corner, but it didn't come off.
Ugre should be one of the less tired players in the field. And you think that with that little bit of skill, perhaps that if Ivory Coast could get it out to him once or twice in this last 15-minute period, he might be able to cause them a problem. But it's getting less and less likely it could do.
Nana's clearance. Kanaki looking strong in the middle, doing well. And then running out of steam. Traoré finds room out there on the left-hand side. And players are jogging around at the moment. Maybe not even jogging. Cleared by Pagao. Oman Biek playing it on, and the return ball to Oman Biek. That was a good tackle again. Some of the tackling has been outstanding by the Ivory Coast defenders. Traoré in possession, tried a little trick and was unlucky it didn't come off. Keke, Ebwellé, puts it on again for Oman Biek. Now Makanaki. Makanaki went down after he played the ball away, but since Cameroon had possession, the referees allowed it to go on and turned dangerously back in again, and another good header by the defender. I'm not entirely sure the goalkeeper will agree with that, because he was coming out, and it's hard to know, of course, from here whether he shouted there. Martin, if you were coach to Cameroon now, you'd say in the next few minutes, pile everything in on him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they've got to throw a few high balls in there. Might as well try and test him out, because they've got to know what he's like. Even if nothing comes of them, at least they've got to know that he might not be in pristine condition for the penalty shootout.
Certainly shaken up after that, and seems to be holding that left shoulder, protecting it almost. He's just playing now with his fellow defenders. It's almost like the kick-in before the match. But they're tired, you've got to say that. These players are obviously tired, playing in hot conditions, playing a large number of matches, as we've been saying, in a short space of time. There's no wonder fatigue has set in. Fatigue and fear. Dangerous combination. Bit of skill. Nyon in possession, sweeps it out to this near side of the field. That was a decent ball. Traoré, the trickery by him, and he sweeps it back in again to the far post. Headed clear by Kundi. Interesting break on here. Biek doing well. Strong in possession. Looking for Makanaki or the other Biek, Oman Biek, his brother on the far side. Couldn't find either of them.
Biek had done so well just until he got to the penalty box. I felt that, I know he's right-footed and he wanted to come in to feel more comfortable just to swing one across the penalty box, but there was an opportunity. I felt that perhaps he just could have had a go down the touchline. Just
I wonder if we're going to see a penalty decider for the first time in this year's championships. Honestly recall a shot or a header or any kind of effort worthy of the name in this period of extra time. It's become quite sterile now, as I suspect the players from all sides, given the opportunity to have a say, would say, let's get on with the penalties. Mind you, for some poor soul out there, there's going to be the disgrace of missing a vital penalty. And it's amazing, people remember the ones who miss a lot longer than they remember the ones who score. And here in England, who will ever forget unfortunate Chris Waddle and Stuart Pearce in the World Cup semi-final against West Germany, as they were then. You forget about the ones who found the net that day, but those two absolutely emblazoned on the memory.
referee to Guiamene. I feel that if Cameroon had even any thoughts in their head about trying to put a few crosses in to test them out, the efforts to get the ball off the Ivory Coast in the last 5 minutes have been nothing short of disastrous. I think they've just allowed them to play the ball, they've retreated again, and no real apparent effort, no real apparent desire, that's probably the word I'm looking for, to go and get the ball.
That's how Ben Salah collected that injury. He must be striking up quite an understanding with the Admiral's men now. He was the one I was telling you about earlier who went off twice in one game. I'm not sure whether it's an indication of the medical knowledge of these stretcher bearers, but as soon as they appear, players seem to miraculously recover again. I'm sure they're good at their job, but it's better than the sight of the old cold sponge. Anyway, he has gone off for the moment, Ben Salah, so it's no laughing matter for him. And on my watch, we've got about 3 minutes remaining in this final period of extra time here in Dakar. And still we await a goal. And I have the feeling we will have to wait until the penalty kicks before we see one. Remember, 5 penalties per side. And if necessary, it then goes to what's known as sudden death. Dakar turning it back. And not surprisingly, Diaby said, well, I don't want it down here. I don't want to make a mistake, and just cracked it back into the Cameroon half. Ebwellé in possession. Not a good ball by him. Good interception by Boudre. And the big man's done well here for Ivory Coast. Takes on Agbo and gets... Well, almost got round him, but Agbo just snaked out a foot, intercepted the cross, and then rather rashly brought down Boudre. And this is an interesting one, with about a minute and a half remaining. A rather quizzical look on Agbo's face there, I think it could be described, at why the referee decided on a free kick here. Don't know why he's questioning it, but it's a very, very dangerous position for Cameroon, this. What a strange free kick at that stage of the game. There's Ben Salah back on the field. Offside, it had to be.
Yeah, it would have been a dangerous free kick if the delivery had been half decent. I thought that was definitely very much the case for Lignon again, to go over and take it, as he'd been taking corners from that particular side of the field to swing it in with his right foot. But they decided on the left foot at Boudre, and he's not just been able to beat the first man with the ball. And what was a potentially dangerous situation has just been frittered away.
It really was a wasteful free kick. Oman Biek and Kana Biek going through. Oh, Oman Biek, the ball just wouldn't sit down for him. I thought they were going to do it again then, Cameroon, with another last gasp goal. They almost did then. They had the 2 Bieks in good positions right in front of the Ivory Coast net, but the ball wouldn't go where they wanted. Traoré threading it through to Diaby, and then on it goes back towards Traoré, but it was a bit too strong for him and the other on-running player. So we're now into stoppage time at the end of this second and final period of extra time. Penalties can only be a matter of a minute or more away. Nervousness, apprehension now. Nobody wants the ball. Suddenly 1 or 2 people are hiding. That might have gone back to the goalkeeper then, but Kundi hammered it up towards Makanaki, headed away by Diaby. The whistle has gone, and it was an offside decision, I think. Was it? No. It's a free kick, I believe, near the halfway line for Cameroon. Well, you couldn't get any later in the game than this. Can we have a winner right at the death? And the goalkeeper fisted it out, not too confidently, I felt, but at least he didn't seem to have a problem with his injured shoulder then. Thought he might have even caught that one, but he's a better judge than me. As Ebwellé Hits it back into the Ivory Coast half. The referee's had a little look at the watch. The linesmen have indicated that we're well into stoppage time now. We've had a minute and more of stoppage time indeed. Ghana are going to have to wait a little bit longer to find out who their final opponents will be on Sunday. Traoré in possession for Ivory Coast. Back it goes to Traoré. This will be the final throw of the dice for the Ivory Coast, and not a very successful one. Throw into Cameroon.
You would nearly say, Alan, that after the initial 15-minute skirmishes, when perhaps Cameroon could have scored a goal, certainly from the penalty kick, that this result, the 0-0 after extra time, was something that we could have foreseen without a great deal of difficulty. I don't think there's been 7 decent attacks since that moment, and it would be a real crying shame now if Cameroon did score the goal at this stage of proceedings. Anyway, fine if they win it in penalty kicks and actually happen to be better at doing that particular thing than Ivory Coast. Well and good.
And they've got themselves in a little bit of a tangle there for a moment, the Ivory Coast defenders, but it's good clearance by Traoré. Gouret felt he was fouled. He wanted a free kick there, not given. Pegao plays it back in. Olympique, and the goalkeeper took that one well enough. And did you notice the way he suddenly dropped his left arm then? He had to go and catch that. There was no question about it. And I thought I saw him suddenly drop his left arm as though he felt a twinge again after that injury. Martin, what do you think?
I agree with you, Alan. Yes, I do. I think he came very gingerly for the first one, the one that you'd mentioned earlier on about 3 minutes ago, when he punched, when Guameni of the first half would most certainly have caught. That time he had to come, he committed himself, he caught it, but you're right. He looked as if he had gone straight for the arm after that, so that's a bad sign for Ivory Coast.
Here's Makanaki for Cameroon. We've had 3 minutes of time added. And I thought the whistle had gone for a second. I think the players did as well. Makanaki still battling in the middle of the field. Carnaby playing it forward. Makanaki racing here with the goalkeeper, who again did not look desperately happy about that and actually fell on his arm. He's favouring that right arm all the time. He doesn't want to get his left arm involved.
I just feel for the Ivory Coast point of view, I wish he wouldn't just play on it as much as that there. We're getting into a stage where they know he has to be in use at this stage. I've got to feel that Cameroon, if I was a Cameroon player, I'd be looking at it and thinking, hey, we've got a great chance of winning this penalty kick shootout here. Because each time he's gone for the ball, it hasn't escaped the Cameroon notice either, that he's gone for the ball there. It's almost traumatic with him. And I feel I wish he wouldn't bother. We know that he's performed heroics right up until this stage of the proceedings. I wish he wouldn't bother. He's going down again, he's looking at it, he's looked across at it, and he stayed down for an awfully long time. I assume he is definitely injured. It'd be unfair of me to say anything else other than that. But now he's up, just let's get on with it.
We've had 4 minutes of time added, astonishingly, here in this second period of extra time. I'm surprised it's as much as that. And the whistle has gone. It's still not the final whistle, or is it now? No, it isn't. No, it's an offside decision. Well, really, this is a bit of a joke now, because players on both sides don't want to go forward at all. They're happy to settle for the penalties at this stage, as you saw a few moments ago with Ivory Coast just knocking about on the edge of their own penalty area. Where the referee has got all this added time from, I don't know. We've had 20 minutes instead of 15. It hasn't all been action, of course. And there, at long last, is the final whistle from the referee. And the match, even with half an hour of extra time, has ended in a goalless draw. And a penalty shootout will decide who goes through to meet Ghana in the final on Sunday. A penalty shootout that might well see Cameroon installed as the team by the Ivory Coast. And bearing in mind it's in the back of the outfield players' heads, the injury to their goalkeeper, they would certainly want to see this first one go in, otherwise they would think the psychological mountain would get even steeper. The referee just satisfying himself everything is right and proper. The goalkeeper, remember, has to stand on the line. The penalty taker has to not indulge in any ungentlemanly conduct. Diaby will take the first kick for Ivory Coast, and he will be faced on the goal line by Joseph Antoine Bell. The first penalty then to decide who goes through to the final, and it's in. Diaby has scored. Interesting, I was talking about ungentlemanly conduct. There's been a lot of discussion about that this season. He stopped and delayed. Watch this, didn't he?
He did, just for that slight second. But he stuck it in very, very well. And it's nice, it's good to get the first penalty in, Alan, because that's the psychological advantages we've been talking about, or disadvantages the case may be, has suddenly swung now against Cameroon.
Now, obviously, the keeper, or rather the referee, has decided he doesn't mind players stopping perhaps in their run-up. There has been a big debate about this, particularly in England this season. But I think the players know now, the ones taking the penalty, that they can get away with that. And it's Mr. Makanaki who has the responsibility of taking the first one for the Cameroons. This to draw level against the injured Guameni in the Ivory Coast goal. It wasn't a good penalty, and the goalkeeper, relieved that it went to his right rather than his left, made the save. And Makanaki looks suitably dejected. It's 1-0 to the Ivory Coast.
Yes, didn't hit it all that well, but as Phil Myson said to me at half-time, all good penalty kick, or all penalty saves are good penalty saves, and Guameni has done brilliantly.
Well, this is a great opportunity now for Ivory Coast to just increase the pressure by making it 2-0 from the spot. The player who will take the kick is Moussa Traoré. This for a 2-0 lead to the Ivory Coast on penalties. The keeper moved, it didn't matter. He found the top corner of the net. A perfect, sweetly struck penalty by Moussa Traoré, and Ivory Coast go 2-0.
Well, they really are in the driving seat. It's an excellent penalty. He's come up to it, he's approached it, and despite the fact that Bell almost got a fingertip to it, it did exactly what he'd asked it to do. It hit the back of the net. And they're in a great position now at the minute.
Well, what a pressure penalty this next one is for Cameroon. Having seen Makanaki miss the first one, having seen Ivory Coast successful from their first two, Ebwellé here has got the weight of his country on his shoulders, because if he misses this, then Cameroon's chances of scraping through here would be minimal. He's got to score, really, psychologically as much as anything. Go on, get on with it, says the referee. Ebwellé wants to compose himself. And he was pretty composed when he finally came up to strike it. A sigh of relief. It's 2-1 on penalties now to the Ivory Coast. So that gives Cameroon a bit of breathing space almost.
Yes, it does. It's interesting now that we assume that it's the left shoulder of Guameni that's actually injured. And yet, ironically, both penalty kicks by Cameroon have been to his right-hand side.
Diaby and Moussa Traoré having scored the first two penalties successfully for the Ivory Coast to give them a 2-1 lead. Bougre, the man who came on as a second half substitute, will take the third one. I think he didn't come on until extra time. Oh dear, that was an absolutely awful penalty. Well, I'd have to disagree with Phil Myson on that. Maybe every penalty save is a good one, but I think you or I could have saved that one, Martin.
That was pathetic. His whole approach, look, he's taken 2 steps back. It's almost like a little dance, and he's put it straight to him. And it was like his free kick, his nonchalant free kick with 2 minutes to go in the end of extra, or towards the end of extra time, where he's just not even been able to knock the ball past the first defender. That there was awful. And I accept they're under ferocious pressure, but heaven's sake, take a race at it. If you're not that sure about it, get back, have 5 or 6 steps, come up and at least slam it. That was awful.
Oman Biek has the chance to bring Cameroon level here, and he's missed it. He's hit it wide. Dear. Look at it again. The keeper got a fingertip to it, in fact. We were watching from the goalkeeper's point of view, and when you see it again, clearly that was a good save.
It's a terrific save. And he's put them right back in it again. He's put the position, puts Bugra's penalty kick right to the back of his mind again. And it's another great position for the Ivory Coast. They must, all they have to do, I say all they have to do, is score the next 2 penalty kicks to win, regardless of what Cameroon do.
This will be for a 3-1 lead for
this is their 4th penalty.
And that is 3-1. So now Cameroon must score from their 2 remaining penalty kicks to have any chance of making the final. Abdoulaye Traoré, the man with over 50 international goals, has scored one of the most important he'll ever get. It's 3-1 now on penalties to the Ivory Coast. If Cameroon miss this next penalty, it's all over. Ivory Coast are there. That's why they're smiling. That's why they're beginning a little muted celebration. This penalty has to go in. Otherwise, Cameroon, the pre-tournament favourites, finalists 3 times in the last 4 competitions, are out. Philippe Redon knows that. Is it going to be the goalkeeper who's taking it? I think it is. Well, what a twist here. One goalkeeper against another. Bell has to score against his counterpart to keep his team in it. And it was an awful penalty again. And Ivory Coast have done it. Ivory Coast have made the final. Celebrations amongst their players, and I must say, in my heart of heart, justice has been done. Cameroon's disappointing attitude to this game almost took itself on into the penalty shootout. That really, well, it proves that if you can't find a good outfield player to take a penalty, the game's up.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more with you, Alan. I feel that Cameroon have shown in the penalty shootout just what they probably thought of recent events. It's incredible that Bell steps up to take a penalty kick and misses like that. It was absolutely shocking. It was almost as if they wanted to go out of the tournament. Ivory Coast just can't believe it. But fair play to them, they've won it.
Sensation here in the penalty shootout. Alain Guémeni will be the hero of Ivory Coast tonight. It's 3-1 to the Ivory Coast on the penalties. 3 times the goalkeeper has saved. First from Makanaki, then from Oman Biek, and finally from his opposite number, Bell. And Ivory Coast are through to Sunday's final. So the rank outsiders then have seen off the pre-tournament favourites Cameroon. It was 0-0 at the end of normal time, 0-0 at the end of extra time. And now, in the most dramatic of fashion, it may not be popular with the football purists, but the only way to settle it in the penalty shootout, Ivory Coast, 3-1, they go through and now meet Ghana for the ultimate prize.
I think the important thing, Al, is that Guémeni becomes fit now for the final. I think that save that he tipped round the post, which was to his left-hand side, might prove the point. Maybe he's not as badly injured as we think, or perhaps maybe just in the excitement of the moment that he's forced into doing that. But it's vitally important for Ivory Coast that he's fit for Sunday's final.
Well, he certainly spent a long time on the floor when he went crashing to the ground in agony, it seemed. Came up holding the left-hand shoulder, and if that was a piece of kidology, it really was masterful stuff, because Makanaki